From Brisbane, Australia, this is episode 101 of The Normal Blokes, a podcast dedicated to improving the competitive 40k experience. I'm Denith, and today we're joined by Luke.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Yeah, it's just the two of us today. We've got some cool stuff to discuss. We're going to talk about the year in review of how competitive 40k has been going, both, in Australia and our part of the world, as well as some of the stuff we've seen overseas internationally. We did one of these episodes last year, and it was actually a lot of fun. Just talking about some events we've gone to and how the meta's kind of evolved. And we've got some exciting stuff at the end of the episode. Luke, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who have seen our Facebook page, we have been running a Movember fundraiser, which ran for the month of November, and we had kindly been donated some models that were commission painted that we could raffle off for this fundraiser. So we could try and get the community involved and give some, prizes, and also, a few little trophies that you can take to your next tournaments or whatnot, and create a conversation about mental health. So these models are painted in a somewhat Movember fashion. So they give you a little bit of bragging rights, something to talk about. And we'll be raffling these off at the end of the episode. So every $10 donated by each of you lovely listeners was then put into a raffle. And at the end of this episode, we will do the random number generated of the tickets for everybody. So stay tuned for your prizes.
Yeah, look, and a big thank you to anyone who donated. We actually reached. We were aiming to get $1,000 donated, but we reached $1,500. So, real big thank you to anyone who supported the cause, and it's probably something we'll continue to do. In future years. We had a good time doing it. I forced myself to run 60Ks in a month, and that was about 59Ks more than I expected to run. So,
especially for those of you who don't know, poor Denise had some knee trouble, so that's a lot of Ks for him.
I'm just a fat fuck, dude. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. I'm just not a runner. But this was good.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just wanted to say for the prizes, I just want to give a big thank you and a shout out to the people who A, donated the models, and then B, commission painted them for us, because this was all done free of charge, so we could make a nice donation to Movember. So we had the Wraith Knight was donated by Linford. Linford painted that years ago, but he was very kind to donate that to us.
That was actually the Linford's one's actually like a personal collection piece that he's donated. Hey.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's converted Eldar Wraith Knight kind of in a Harlequin's fashion because he loves his Tridar or his mixed Eldar. So it's a beautiful piece, and he's a great painter. So very lucky to whoever wins that one.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got a Imperial Knight, which was donated by myself, and then Nick Wright was then very, very kind to commission paint that for us in a sort of TNB style and Movember style theme, and it is beautiful. The photos don't really do it justice to how it looks in person, but it is magnificent. He spent a lot of time on that. So Nick's a great guy. Thank you to those two for donating them. The third one was. What was the third one?
Repulsor, Luke, donated Repulsor. By Brisbane Gaming Collective, BGC.
That's right. Yeah, so Brisbane Gaming Collective, our local game store, was donated by Sal. So thank you very much, Sal, for that donation. And it was also commission painted by Hayden Walduck, who's one of our good mates, and he's done a beautiful job on that as well. Again, the photos don't do it justice. I've got it here right beside me, and it is phenomenal. It is beautiful.
I love the little mustaches on the Knight and the Repulsor. They're great.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's done some OSL effects. He's then done some marble effects on the doors. It's actually beautiful. So
they're in the Normal Blokes colors, the black, white, orange. So it's pretty cool.
That's right. And then lastly, we had a bit of terrain piece donated by Erin Ha. So she she made that herself, and she's also painted it as well. So it's some beautiful lava terrain pieces which she's donated. So we'll raffle that off as well. So thank you to all our members who are a part of that. It means a great deal, so thank you.
Yeah, and look, if there are any, if honestly, there's a bit of a community shout out. If next year anyone wants to get in on providing something like that as a donation, we would definitely be more than keen to take that on and make this as big and as fun as we can.
Yeah, of course. We're also thinking of adding to it maybe maybe on the next one we could get some community involved and see how
Mm,
you guys want the commission painting to go. If it wants to be a certain style, if you want to do something funny, we'll
yeah.
maybe get some votes, some interaction. But let us know if you've got any ideas. We'd love to hear them.
We should get someone to do a diorama with the four of us in character.
Maybe, but who would want that? Probably only
I mean,
us.
like, I reckon I'd want it.
I'd want it.
But
I'd pay
we're
so
out of
much
the
money
draw,
for
aren't we?
that.
Yeah. uh, all right. Well, hey, let's get started on our topic, guys. So, I guess we'll kind of just roll in from January 2021. You know, the big event we had that a lot of us went to was Uprising Adelaide, which took over as our national, ITC champs for the end of the season. Same, I
Mhm.
think it was the same weekend as LVO or similar timing to LVO.
That's
Um,
correct. Yep.
oh, actually, it wasn't. LVO didn't happen this year, did it? I'm pretty sure it was just the Las Vegas Open that happened.
Yeah.
But
They
yeah,
normally
and
run at the side or on
that's
the
it.
same weekend, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, going into Uprising, it was a mix of stuff. This was when Marines were really doing quite well. So we had internationally White Scar, Salamanders, Raven Guard doing really well, and a big percentage of the player base were in Necrons, Space Marines, and funnily enough, Death Guard as well. So we're seeing those factions quite prolifically. Um, this was where the Necron lists with both the OBSEC Horde as well as the Novok and Silent King lists that people like Nathan Bleakley took down were really really kicking ass.
Mhm.
But the Kingpins were chaos, mate, and that kind of shocked the world when Matt Morosoli took Uprising with a mixed Chaos Space Marine and Demons list with Keepers, Lock, and some Emperor's Children Terminators that no one had ever heard of.
Yep.
With the chapter approved points drop, they dropped like 8 or 10 points a model, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they were in a good spot, and Liam coming in second with his 60 word bearers possessed. And I think both those lists had really good meta picks with all the Imperium around at that time with
That's
Space
right.
Marines. Yeah.
Because Marines were so I guess present that they thought, hey, what's the most common army? And Marines at the time that
Mm.
weren't they just a large portion of the meta, so
Yeah.
it was a great meta call, yeah.
Yeah, and look, obviously two very skilled players taking them down there. And
Hmm.
something that we saw at Uprising that we didn't quite see anywhere else in the world was actually what you ran, Luke, which was the Black Templars. And
That's right, the Templey boys, yeah.
dude, and funnily enough, their pre-codex like rules were absolutely insane with stuff like Devout Push, some of the strats and litanies they had access to.
Yeah.
They could just be White Scars when they wanted to advance and charging. They could be Iron Hands when they wanted to with a 5-up Feel No Pain.
Hmm.
They could be Space Wolves with their Devout Push and, move, shoot, move shenanigans. And the stuff
Yeah.
that people like yourself and, Hayden Waldock, I'm sure you and Hayden worked a lot on that list, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. I hadn't played in a while, and I was kind of a bit out of the meta. And Hayden, I was helping him paint some models, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you just run my Templars?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll have a look." Then I looked at the index, and I thought, "Holy crap! Look at all these rules. This is insane."
Yeah.
And no one had ever seen them because I'd asked some people about them, and people hadn't even looked at the rules. It was kind of like a hidden gem at the time. So I
Mm.
thought, hey, I'm gonna move at the end of my opponent's charge phase, and I'm gonna see some jaws drop. And it was a whole lot of fun, man. It was crazy.
Oh man, yeah, it was great stuff that you were pulling off. And you went 6-2 or 7-1 at Uprising.
6-2, I'm gonna say. Yeah,
Yes. And you came in fourth place, so just missing the podium, as many of the memes
that's
say.
right.
But
I
yeah,
versed Matt Morosoli, the winner. And I think that was the second last round. I versed Matt
that's
Morosoli, and yeah, it was a tough game because again, I was Imperium, and I felt the new chaos.
yeah. And then we had Big Stewie Trainer coming in third with another list that no one had ever seen or heard of in the edition: 20 Grey Knights Pallies.
That's right. Yeah, the Pallies, as well as he took I think a lot of perks,
Mm, yeah.
which were a little bit of an underused unit as well because you could take 5-man squads of heavy weapons, and at the time they could shoot out of line of sight, and it was good because we were also seeing a lot of Dark Eldar Raiders, and at the
Yes.
time low armor save versus T5 models versus Strength 5, no AP but D3 +1 damage.
Yeah.
He was just picking up 4 or 5 Raiders a turn.
Yeah, and the other thing that we actually failed to mention, Luke, is another army that was kicking ass at the start of ninth that was on its kind of tail end here was Harlequins. And,
Yeah,
Brian,
that's right.
who's one of our local players, Brian Lakeland, took down a Harlequins army. And, yeah, that army was causing some real issues because they love killing marine bodies. And,
That's right.
the tricks that they can pull off, similar to the Templars, on an unsuspecting, army or opponent, is
Uh-huh.
huge. So I think this was Uprising was really the tail end of Harlequins, and we'll talk a bit about that over the next few months of the year. But yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
other thing that I guess put Marines in quite a good standing at that event was how aggressively costed some of their units were. You were talking before we recorded on how cheap Vanguard vets were then, and especially how cheap
Yeah.
Plasma Inceptors were then. They were like 40 points or 45 points a dude at that stage. That's
Yeah, it
before
was
they got pushed
insane.
up, and now they're up at 60. They got the second points increase. So, like back then,
Mm.
it was like I ran 5 in a Deathwatch kill team, and it was just a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, I ran 6, and them with devout push at the time, you could move on the second floor of a building, shoot, and then devout push down a floor. So you could just fire and fade them, and no one could ever do anything about it. So it was pretty, the things you could do with them, and they were just so points efficient. You put 5 of them at a squad that got blast rule for minimum 3
Mm,
shots, and it just killed anything. So it was
yeah.
very oppressive.
Well, especially because Necrons had Obsec Scarab hordes and warriors and stuff. You 5 or 6 of them just looked at a big unit and just killed it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I remember running
And
them as Deathwatch, keep getting +1 to hit and stuff against Fly, and you just look at Scarabs, they all disappear.
yeah, exactly. And at the time as well, the meta then was OBSEC wasn't that prevalent or strong. So that's why Marines were doing so well because they had the rights of war, and then the
Yeah.
Necrons were doing well because they had, everything was OBSEC, and also why Harlequins are doing so well because they had the best troops in the game at the time.
Yeah.
But they've sort of phased out as more and more things get, OBSEC and stronger. So
Yeah, and that's it. And one of the armies that was doing quite well prior to this was like infantry based custodes, and they
that's
were
right.
they were doing quite well. The addition of stuff like Telemons and the relic contemptors that they have, the Galatis and the Achilles dreadnoughts and stuff. Especially the sword and board ones, they're amazing. So additions of that kind of stuff in custodes and the Venatari being a really good meta pick at the time.
Mm,
Was also another army that was doing quite well. But then Marines just had OBSEC in droves as well with Rights of War and other abilities like in Salamanders being able to put OBSEC on stuff and they can go off and do their thing.
hmm
But yeah, and a few other things, I guess, coming out of January into Feb, March, a few other things kind of came through. The Dark Angels supplement and codex release was probably the biggest change for Marines at the start of this year, which happened in kind of I think it was February or end of January. Um, and they really threw the Marine options around with defensive Terminator bricks still being a thing, but also access to Stubborn Defiance. Being able to
yeah,
sit around and take super super chill secondaries and be essentially unkillable. Um, the other thing that was pretty hectic at the start of the year was the Sisters release of the new book. Miracle
yeah, that's right.
Dice still being harder to get, but still quite a strong system, and the build for Sisters changed. And just before April, the Forge World update that made Megaeras cheap as fuck and made them just
Yeah.
absolute weapons through another spanner in the works.
Yeah, and
Um,
suddenly everyone's knight turned into a Megara somehow.
yeah,
You're like,
just
hang on, that's
I don't
not a
know where all these
Megara.
Megaeras came from.
Yeah.
There was one little Forge World just building Megara, building lightning cannons and building those big siege claws.
Or just
Um,
like knights with missing arms, and it's like, it's
yeah.
Megara. Oh,
Oh,
okay,
I
cool.
guess. But hey, do you want to talk about the big bad elephant in the room that hit us in April?
Oh yeah, I mean, I wrote a bit of this train. I think a lot of people took advantage of this, but hey, it was a good shock. It was a good change because at the time people were getting over Marines. So in April we got hit with the Drukhari Codex. So that met us with a lot of what the most gravitated unit was the liquefier spam on racks. I mean, the 2 damage flamers with +1 to wound, and there's no downfall into overcharging that. I mean, that was abused. That for sure, that was abused.
Oh
Uh,
man, crazy.
but I took it one step further. I thought, you know what? No one's paying attention to these 60-point Chronos that get strength 5 flamers with +1 to wound.
Yeah.
So you're wounding most infantry, and at the time it was a lot of Marines.
Mm.
So you're wounding Marines on 2s and instantly killing them. So The Kronos came about in Brisbane, and I was lucky to win the GT there with that. And
Mhm.
then finally, we started seeing Kronos in the meta, and then also Artists of Flesh, which is something that Denise played first. You want to tell us about the Artists?
Yeah, I think it's it's something that's getting talked about a little bit more now, isn't it? But I remember in April when Drakari came out, I was in a bit of an odd spot with some of the Imperium armies, and we had to set up for a team event. And I thought, okay, let's. Sam Rubino, who's one of our local players, wasn't playing, and I was like, cool, Sam, I'm coming over. I'm going to borrow some Drakari. Um, so I put a list together, and we looked at Drakari in the mirror, and as a lot of the marine lists evolved to dreadnoughts that have neg 1 damage, it turns out having neg 1 damage is really good in the Drakari mirror. So we started exploring Artists of Flesh. And in that teams list, I just started with 2 units of 5 grotesques. So it's just a patrol with like a homunculus, 2x5 grots, 10 homoxites, and it just went from there. And those grotesques just caused so much havoc. I remember having like an entire Sisters Retributor brick, like 2 to 3 units of Retributors, plus Storm Bolters, plus everything go into that unit of Grots. And then the Grot would be down to like 2 Grots. It'd get charged by like Repentia, and the Repentia would kill 1 Grot. That 1 Grot would kill the 5 Repentia, and then I'd Pain Siphon it. And like it was just ridiculous how much fire like these units could take.
Yeah.
And man, and I'm really excited that Artists of Flesh in Drukhari are now coming up as a really good build. Look, I shouldn't say I'm excited because I have to fucking play against them all the time, but they are really a force to be reckoned with. But I think what kind of led to that with Drukhari was, at the start, the liquefier spam in transports was so oppressive, as well as the witches. Like the witches just almost invalidated Harlequins, and it almost invalidated combat marines because you've got
Yeah.
these cheap bodies that are obsec that in combat are actually a pain to kill because they have an invo. You can do stuff like lightning fast them when there's actually a weight of attacks to get through them, and they've got
Mhm.
heaps of mechanics to keep you locked in combat, to wrap you, to just be really niggly and annoying.
And they're fast. They're
They are
fast as anything.
super fast,
They're
yeah,
going
and
going
then
like 11 plus D6, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, +1 to charge. Cool.
yeah, and that's before we're talking about incubi, about hellions, about Reaver jet bikes, about Drazar. Like we talk 20 minutes just about Drazar.
Yeah.
But all these like aggressively pointed units just made Drakari just such a force. And the biggest thing, obviously, and we've talked about this before, is the inability for other armies to trade with Drakari.
Mhm.
And the liquefiers got nerfed. In that you can't use dark techno on them. The raiders got a points bump. A lot of the strong stuff got a bit of a points bump, like Incubi and Witches. But now the artists are really taken off. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then the next big book to drop was AdMech. You've played
Oh
against
god.
a couple of good AdMech players in your time this year, Lukey.
Oh,
Do you
I
want to tell
think
us a bit
every
about what scares you about AdMech?
every tournament I end up playing Dan Savage first round, it seems. So it's versing AdMech is the bane of me because every time I play it, I'm still like, oh, you can do this. There, that's cool. But from what I understand, they've been hit with a bit of nerf bat at the moment. But hey, when they first came out, it was the Vanguard spam, which was auto wounding on 4s to hit, and that was just, I was completely taken back when that first happened. And then it turned into the Flyer spam, which fortunately I never versed, and I don't even want to ever verse it. But from my understanding as well, that's been changed. Maybe you could talk about
Yeah,
more on that,
yeah.
Denise.
Yeah, I guess starting with like the Skatari Horde build, like that was the obvious winner out of the book because of all
Mm,
the layered buffs you could put on them and the strats that made them actually kill anything they looked at. And like Adam Camilleri on Art of War Down Under used to talk about, AdMech was now an army that anything that they see, they will kill. And
yeah.
which honestly was quite true, unless you had some kind of bodyguard mechanic. And the Las chickens and stuff having core was a big deal at the start.
Mhm.
Lucius buff stacking with cover was a big buff at the start. But that got FAQ'd out. The Vanguard auto wounding got FAQ'd out a bit to make it a bit less crazy. And the little points bump that they got did change what Skatari hordes could do. But they still had some really powerful units, like the Corpuscaria is still really good. The Infiltrators and Ruststalkers are amazing.
Yeah.
But then the second the Hordes got FAQ'd into being worse, then people just started taking the planes. So people
Yeah.
like Manny Chima, for example, and Malcolm and Rubio in the UK, who are taking like 4 to 6 planes and plus 60 infantry or maybe 80 infantry on top of that. We're just doing so much damage, and these lists were some of the lists that were really polarizing the meta a bit, and unfortunately turning a few people off the game. But at least now, they've fixed a lot of that. But then we thought like it's like we got hit by the first 2 waves of Drukhari and Admech. Like, oh, we must be through it. Surely they can't fuck it up anymore. And then the Orcs came out.
Oh god.
And
And
yeah, look, I'm happy the Orcs are tooled back. I think some of the Orc lists that are coming out now with Goffs and stuff are really fun. Some of the Blood Axe things in the Army of Renown that they got, and the Speed Freaks detachment that they got is really cool. But yeah, it was a bit dicey for a while, wasn't it, Luke?
yeah, look, it was. I played my first game against that. I was playing the old T Suns, and I was playing a few games, and I was really enjoying the psychic because I was kind of a bit after the Admech and Drukhari. Even though I played Drukhari, I was just kind of a bit over the power creep that was happening. And I heard everybody talk about the speed war, and then I go and play Nathan Bleakley, and he tables me essentially turn 1, and I was look, I wasn't at my best. No, I didn't say anything. I was just very quiet the whole time, and I thought, oh my god, this is the nail in the coffin for me. I am done. I don't ever want to play the speed war at a tournament because literally it was just 2 buggies shot at me and just killed like half my army. And I said to Nathan, how many points is that? And he said 90 points, and I almost broke my keyboard. So it was just, I was like, really? They got, and at the same time as well, they got rid of well, recently they got rid of Astral Aim from Grey Knights, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, Grey Knights lost to Astral Aim, but luckily they gave it to Orcs because Orcs have always been able to shoot through walls and stuff. That's been
they just believe so much, and the bullet will hit the target. But,
they become better than GK. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the 2 things that made the speed war so strong at the time is in 9th edition, we rely a lot on obscuring terrain to keep us safe from all the strong shooting. And they had a couple of things that didn't give a fuck about obscuring terrain. And one of the first ones was the Rucker trucks that had out of line of sight shooting that could push to -3 AP. The second thing they had was like really strong aircrafts. Aircrafts, invos, aircrafts that could do D3+3 las cannon shots, damage profiles, things like that. The WAS bomb, and of course the combination of that with speed war and that with freebooters to get stacking pluses to hit meant that a lot of the armies that played an MSU game were actually punished for playing an MSU game because they just made the Orc shooting better, and it gave them more things to destroy. But obviously that's been retooled now with the balancing update, with what they've done with aircraft. Look, I personally think the buggy change, where you can only have kind of 1 unit of each buggy, it's a bit heavy-handed because it makes all the buggy upgrades, the custom jobs, worthless and useless because it means you can only take 1 of the buggy. So it honestly hurts in that regard. I mean, if they tooled freebooters and if they tooled the Speedwire itself, like, I have no issue with people running 15 buggies because they want to run a buggy list. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Speed Freaks detachment is kind of like. Yeah, I thought that was a bit heavy-handed, but I'm glad that I don't have 3 WAS bombs down my throat turn 1 anymore. That's good.
Yeah, I think I personally would have liked to have seen a different fix for that. I felt like it was kind of a bit of a band-aid patch, just like, oh, we'll just limit the number of units you can take. As an additional nerf compared to every other army, and I don't really think that that's a good balance change when you just
it doesn't feel good, right? Like it's like telling me I can only take 1 Redemptor Dreadnought. It's like, well, never mind.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Redemptor's too good. You can only take 1 now. Yeah, it's a band-aid patch. I like to call them a band-aid patch rather than like a proper fix. And the thing is, it leaves bad taste in some people's mouths because some people want to run a full mech or buggy list. Sure, Bob's your uncle, do what you want. But now you actually can't in the things. So I think maybe tailoring it, points adjustments or something to make it seem like, if you're going to commit to this, you're only going to get a few of them because they upgraded a few of the vehicles and made them cheaper. So they got like a double buff. But you
Yeah.
could have just, done things a different way. A points adjustment would have
Yeah,
been
like
completely
change the
reasonable.
speedwire rule a little bit. Just give them the extra AP or something. That like leave it at
Yeah,
that, and then just
yeah,
like
exactly.
retool speed for freebooters just a little bit to not be
Yeah.
like multiple pluses to hit, and then we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah,
But
but at the same time, I do like it because orcs to me have always been like the horde boy army. Whenever you see from the original Dawn of Wars, you see the
oh
horde of
mate,
orcs and you get to shoot them all down.
mm,
That's what I envision orcs to be, and
yeah,
it's kind of like flavorful. So
yeah.
hopefully people turn to like boy spam or something, and we get
Well,
like the traditional
that's where
orc horde.
some of the lists are going in terms of the Goth list. Like it's not necessarily big
Exactly.
units,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of little units in trucks, a lot of commandos now. The Beast Snagger boys are getting some of their play, as are some of the Squeakhog lads. So
Yeah.
some of
G
those
Dub needed to
units.
sell them. Sell the beast snagger boys.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, they have
So
some amazing rules, and like I was talking with a few of
yeah.
the boys, and they have awesome play into Meat Mountain.
Yeah.
So like, just talking to Nathan and stuff about the options there, and they do a lot of killing with the +1 to wound and stuff, and exploding hits with the Goths. They do a fair bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, like orcs going to that, like even though they're still quite strong, I think it's just a better player experience. Like you said, like it's okay having dudes just run at you versus being shot across from the table and from a plane. Um,
Yeah, a bit of interactivity because before it was a little bit oppressive. Like they got to hit you, you couldn't hit them. They're
hmm,
-1 damage out of line of sight. It's
yeah,
hard.
and look, it's definitely in a better place now, although
Yeah.
they're still really strong. Now the other things that happened between now and kind of mid-year were there were two books that came out, Luke, that made every Space Marine player take out their pocket Libby. Now, can you talk a bit about those two books?
Their pocket Libby.
Yeah, so we could get at Ball the Witch against these guys.
Yeah. Yes, the T Suns and GK, and when the study edition hit, they kind of found that hard to find their ground, and then the new books came out, and people at first were a little bit, oh, I don't really know what to run, and now they're topping a lot of armies. GKT Suns, I mean, the Grey Knights, they interact every phase of the game. So much damage you can pop out. I actually believe there's a lot of different builds in the book, and people aren't utilizing them. They're kind of overshadowed by, I think, the Dread Knight lists. So I think there's a lot of more options there. I want to see more purifiers, for example. And I know a lot of guys in Australia like the Purifiers more than the Dread Knights.
Mhm.
Because hey, I used to run the Dread Knights back in April, and that's when they could get 3-up imbos and have bigger buffs, and they all got rerolls. So I thought they were better than they are now. Granted, they are still really good now. T Suns on the other hand, they started off a bit rocky, but then as people figured out the book, because it is super complex. I mean, there's so many things you have to keep track of in addition. And look, that may not be everyone's opinion, but in my opinion, there's a lot to keep track of. You've got Cabal points, you've got so many different psychic powers. They kind of replace the old GK in the sense that, they get so many different powers to cast, whereas before it was just kind of, they had 2 trees and a
Yeah.
few key powers that you bothered with, whereas now it's like 18 or 24 different powers. I don't even know how many there are right now.
Mm.
But there's so much flavor there. I think there's a lot to be explored. Like Liam, for example, has been playing the T Suns non-stop, and he's coming up with new lists. Some
Yeah.
being, the 50 rubrics, or now he's moved on to 30 Terminators, and all of which are just extremely powerful. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think Liam, credit to him. I know how much me and you love making this head even bigger, Luke. But big credit to Liam for really pushing it with T Suns and really pushing the
Mm,
envelope and doing well at tournaments as well as taking it to a lot of the big medalists. I saw Liam beat a 18 buggy list with bolters on T Suns, which is pretty funny.
mm, yep.
And like props to him. He's really shown the depth of that book, and he's not just played the one list either. So for anyone who is at home that has been listening to some of the stuff that we've said about T Suns or some of the stuff that Liam's talked on other shows about it, yeah, give it a good crack because there is a lot of depth in that book. It reminds me of some of the techie books, kind of like almost Death Watch, where there's all these options in certain units that just haven't been really untapped yet.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's cool. And Grey Knights, like you said, Luke, a lot of the infantry builds that we might see more than the Dread Knight builds are what scare me the most. I don't really want to run it like 80 infant or 70 infantry in a GK army because sure I'll get 15 aboard the Witch, but by the time I finish trading, they've still got 30 infantry that's going to run me over.
Yeah, exactly. And now that Power Sword's got, +1 strength. The Grey Knight's having, +1 strength, -3 AP and 2
Mm,
flat damage. It's kind of like the Halberd, but with extra AP. So they
yeah,
kind of got better in combat. Their troops, as I said before, troops are kind of we're finding more and more integral part of the game. Their troops are probably the best troops in the game at the moment. I mean,
yeah.
strikes,
Well, oh,
3
look, I
attacks,
rate it.
man, it's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. They're
And
Blade Guard. Their
yeah,
troops are Blade Guard.
exactly.
Yeah,
And they're not too expensive really. And with Hammerhand, all squads can reroll a wound. It's insane.
it's massive.
And then you pop ancients with them. You can even put an ancient that gives them +1 to hit, and they can run off and go, cut things up, and the tide on top of that. What I don't like, however, about them is that the tide's kind of um, I don't know. There's not much variation in the tide. You kind of stick in one tide the whole game.
Yeah,
It's very rare that you change out of it unless there's special circumstances.
yeah.
Um,
It's definitely less jumpy than last edition, right?
yeah,
Like
than
last
the
edition, you could
last
jump
one.
back into certain tides when you need a smite side tide and the shooting tide. Well,
Yeah,
now it's like you start in shadows if they're going to shoot you, then you go to the movement one, or you go to the combat one, and then you're
yeah.
done. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because the combat one is the shooty one, so
Well,
it's like
that's
you
yeah,
get
that's it now, right?
yeah. And the thing is, it's like half the time, you people have got interceptors now or teleporting
Mm,
dreadnoughts or something like that. So the movement one's rarely used. I find a lot of
yeah,
people just stick in the shooting one because you'd
it's
rather 6-inch extra range than 2-inch extra movement. Like
yeah,
yeah. So it's interesting. I would have liked more flavor and flexibility there because it would have kept that sort of complexity of the last GK Codex,
mm,
similar to what T Suns is now. So yeah, it is what it is. There's still a lot of power in the book that I think is yet to be explored, and as
yeah.
Dread Knights fall back, we'll probably see some more and more things.
I think the way that GW handled like the amount of power they put into those two books was really nice because we saw like they came out and Orcs Drakari Admech was still around, right? And they were going
Mm,
up and down depending on how their faction was going. Like they were the volatile ones, but these books were just solid, consistent, powerful, and they just stayed there. And that's the kind of thing that if I was a GK player, if I was a T Suns player, that's what I'd like with my faction. Like I
mm,
don't want something that's busted beyond belief that's obviously going to get nerfed into the ground. So I'm not going to buy 15 buggies. I want
yeah,
them, I want all my units to have a role, to have a purpose, and still be playable. So actually, as much as GW have dropped and picked up and dropped and picked up and dropped and picked up the ball this year, they've actually done a great job with these books. I think so I'm pretty happy.
yeah. I still think they're very they're very 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 powerful. But I just don't think that they're as completely overbearing and give you the feel bads like
Yes.
Drakari and Admech did. Or,
Yeah.
or the Speedway, because like when you played those three codexes, Drakari, Admech, or Speedway in their prime, you just felt like something wasn't right.
Yeah. And
Something
like
was going wrong, and you're like, oh my god, what is happening?
yeah, and not to put anyone down that plays those armies, but you can definitely tell like when the GK players and AdMech play oh sorry, GK players and T Suns players, when they're doing really well with their army, they're putting a lot of effort into looking at the movement, looking at the firing lines, and looking at where the units need to be.
Hmm.
And it's like the orc comparison with the infantry orcs, like Goths. It's as an opponent, it's fun to play against that too. So it's
Yeah.
cool.
I think that ties into I think the complexity of it. Like, if there's more complexity to it and it's harder to execute, then that's okay. But
Mm,
the power cap is high. The skill level is high. But in the armies where you just plug in, anything and it just absolutely demolishes most of your opponents, I think that's where people get the feel bad, and that's where you kind of realize, yeah, something's got to change here. But again, like in, I'm not completely naive. I do think there's going to be some changes for the GK and T Suns to be happening soon. I mean, the amount of mortal wounds T Suns can put out is ballistic.
yeah, it's a
GK
lot.
already saw their first nerf because the Strike Squad could do 24 mortals, which I
Yeah,
saw in an online stream once, and I was like, okay, that's getting changed. I'm not gonna
yeah,
I'm not gonna play that, even begin to test that. I know that's gonna change.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there's things to fix, but I don't think they're completely broken.
And I guess the next thing that came out, which was the definition of polishing the turd, is I shouldn't say that's pretty mean. The Leviathan supplement, the make Hive card great again supplement.
Oh yeah,
That was in Rising Tide, I think it was. So that really put Nids back on the map.
meat's
That
back on the menu,
Oh
boys.
yeah, and we saw it in people like Manny Chima running the 17 Hive Guard, and I think he came second at the recent GW Open. And other players like John Lennon picking up the Hive Guard as well. This Leviathan upgrade really gave them the shooting power to punch through a lot of the things in a similar, unfortunately, a similar dynamic to the power vacuum that was gone with the Orc Speedway.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the Nids at length at previous episodes, but they've had their little time in the sun and they're doing quite well. But they're, as we saw, getting taken over by the new Druk Meat Mountain that doesn't die. So
Yep.
I think that looks like the big problem to solve right now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you ask Liam, he's already solved it because I versed him with a
He's
form of
we're
Meat
not
Mountain.
allowed to talk about his list that he solved Meat Mountain with, mate.
Oh right, well, you can see it.
Oh,
But anyway,
it's
I got.
220 Crute. It's 220 Crute. That's how he's done it.
Oh right, okay. No, I was referring to the T Suns, but hey,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. So I mean, Meat Mountain has some power. I played it before the new points changes, and the points changes has made it even more crazy. I think it's 2 points efficient because we talked about it before. Grots were just insanely points efficient before. However, nobody was running them. And I think it was kind of one of those hidden gems. Same with the Kronos at first, but now Kronos are kind of coming into play, which is why you saw the points hike go up. Talos at the same time. I originally started with Talos because I liked having them as -1 damage because that makes them absolutely ballistic. But they got a 10 points reduction alongside the Grots. So I mean, the mixture between the two, it's you don't have enough turns to kill that many wounds. So I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a tough problem to kill. And funnily enough, I think the best thing to do with them is actually just mass 1 damage shooting. Because obviously the meta is kind of like a 2 damage meta. So, but you pay a bit of a premium for them.
Mm.
So if you're using those shots and on those sorts of models, -1 damage, 5 feel no pain. A third of the time you're going to do absolutely nothing. So it's a lot of your points premium just going to waste.
Yeah.
Where if you have a bunch of just a absolute bucket ton of 1 damage shot, that I find is as playing them, I found that was hard for me to deal with.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's, I think, where people are going to lean towards. Stuff like Lightning Claws is starting to get value. They go in and actually put a bit of work in if you have enough volume of attacks.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
playing against Meat Mountain, I've played probably 3 games this last week against Sam Rubino, and it feels like you're at the bottom of a mountain, and turn 1, there's a boulder that starts rolling down from the top straight towards you. And it's your decision when you want to engage this motherfucking boulder, but you definitely don't want to do it at turn 5. You want to try and thin this thing out as much as you can before it really ramps up, right?
It's like the elephant on the table. You're like, oh, elephant in the room. I don't want to deal with it. No one wants to talk about it, but it's coming.
But it's on the way, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I think lists that can really fight Meat Mountain on their own terms are going to be strong. Classically, these lists don't have a massive amount of obsec, but I think that might change in the future with the way that the archetype goes. So lists that can out obsec them and spread the list out and play the corners a bit and still score points in the corners will do all right. Because the second this thing spreads out, it finds it hard, or if you force the Talos to go in a direction they don't really want to go. Because if this list takes, let's say, Herd the Prey, and you've got a random unit in a corner that they can't reach and shoot, well, I guess they're going to have to move something there to kill it. And all these units are big, 200 point or 175 point plus units. And there is a cap of the turns on the game, and units can only move so far. So, lists that can do that will do quite well against Meat Mountain. But if you try and take this thing head on, it's really not your style. It's going to end badly.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at you happily laughing.
Yeah. Well, I'm moving off it now, so my time is done.
And yeah, look, as we talked about, Orcs are still doing quite well. It's cool to see the new builds coming in with Orcs, with some of the Goth builds that we're seeing. I'm keen to see what comes out of the campaign books actually for Orcs. And the other thing is I think it's the largest super major in Europe just happened over the weekend. And there were a number of lists that went 5-0. I think Orcs won it. There were GK lists, there were two Drakari lists up there. There was also a Imperial Knights list run by David, I think his name is, on Vanguard Tactics, one of their coaches or members. 5-0 with Knights, which is really exciting because they were not doing that before the balancing slate.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I mean, when I read the balance for Knights, I thought, yes, that's obviously what they needed the whole time. They needed some sort of way to play the primary game because
Yeah,
they just couldn't interact. It was bad,
yeah,
unless they obviously just absolutely blew you off the table, which it can happen on some maps or some terrain layouts. But it was it was very hard to go undefeated with them. You'd normally, go 4-1 or something like that. So post FAQ, them actually having some play without absolutely dominating the meta, that to me says like that's a really good balance change.
yeah. And it's going to be so hard to knock Knights off objectives because, like, as a lot of people have seen, the baby Knights, the armigers now count for 5 for objectives secured. The big Knights don't inherently get the OBSEC, but they count for 10. But what starts to get scary is, when little Knights go out into an objective, you can't move 5 infantry or 5 troop models there to own that objective. You've got to either have 6 or you've got to kill the baby Knight. And who's to say if you charge that thing, it won't overwatch or fight back and kill one of your dudes?
Model, yeah.
Yeah, and who's to say that if you shoot it, it won't blow up and kill 3 of your dudes, and then maybe on a 4-up get back up? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many little factors that could just swing an objective now that it makes the matchup really interesting. You can't just play primary and win against Knights, so it's going to be interesting to see how some armies learn how to engage Knights where they've previously just ignored them. Don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the most common one you'd see is just someone throwing out 5 witches, tagging the
Yeah,
baby knight in combat, and then be like, "Oh, in the objective, I don't have
yeah,
to do anything. I'll hold it for 2 turns or something because you can't fall back, yada yada."
yeah.
But now you actually have to play the game against knights. You can't just do that cheeky primary steal.
Yeah, and even stuff like a big knight with 1 or 2 baby knights behind it, sitting on an objective, going, okay, this guy counts as 10, this little baby knight's a 5, so I have 15. There's no way you can fit 15 models on this objective.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
unless
So
you
you have
can
to kill
remove
it.
the
Yeah.
obsec or kill the thing, yeah, it's done. And you charge the
Yeah.
big knight up, 6-inch heroic from the little knight. See you later. So
But look, that's not to say that who'd you say won this one, sorry?
it was an orc player that won. I didn't see the list.
Oh, okay.
But I just
Well,
saw who was in the 5-0 bracket.
yeah, okay. The not to say the Knights player didn't play exceptionally well because I imagine you would have to
Oh yeah, to
as
go
well.
5-0, yeah.
But thank God, there's finally, it seems like there's a bit of a balance coming in. Hopefully it'll keep going this way, and we'll get more and more patches that are overarching balances for a lot of factions. I mean, we still see that Eldar didn't get touched in this patch, which I thought was a little bit surprising. Like Craft World Eldar, I mean.
Yeah.
Which I would have liked to have seen as well because
Yeah.
they're kind of not doing too well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and look, I guess rounding out the year, we've got probably early in the new year, we've got 2 books coming out. We've got the GSC book, which I'm sure it's going to turn the meta on its head. And then,
Yep.
funnily enough, we have the Custodes book, which is an elite army coming out with some new rules. So that'll be interesting to see how they fit in where, in a meta where these elite power armor-esque, Terminator-esque bodies aren't doing well at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's been an interesting year. It's we've definitely rolled with the punches, but it's looking like it's in a pretty fun spot for 2022. Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover before we name some winners?
No, I'm excited to just get in naming some winners.
Awesome. You got the
Anything?
random number generator there.
I do. I'd just like to thank Google for this random number generator. Thank you for letting me
All
use
right.
this.
So let's go. Let's raffle off the terrain.
Okay.
Kindly donated by Aaron Harvey.
Yep.
Let's do that, and then we'll do the Wraith Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll do the Repulsor.
Yep.
then we'll do the Imperial Knight. Let's go in that order.
Okay.
We
All right,
apologize.
I'm a
if
little
you
bit
win a
nervous.
prize.
How are
We
you feeling?
apologize
I'm a
if
little
you get a prize that you don't want, but
yeah.
yeah.
It's free. Suck it
Yeah,
up. No,
I'm
I'm
pretty
kidding. I'm
sure
kidding. Kidding.
I'm pretty sure someone posted on our thing. There was like,
Ye-
oh, they're raffling a Repulsor and a Wraith Knight. I hope they'll get good in the meta sometime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, in future we might try and figure out a way to get more meta relevant armies. But hey, you could just wait a
Hey,
year and it might be
I
relevant.
know,
So you
right?
never know.
Add to the collection. All right,
Yeah.
Luke. First winner of the terrain. Who's got
Okay.
it?
You ready? Random number is a big 14. Now this is James Fuller.
Oh, Big Fuller with the terrain.
Big Fuller with the terrain. James is quite lucky. He gets a lot of these lucky door
Oh,
things at some
James is
tournaments.
an OG normal bloke actually, and he's up with the Northside boys at the moment. He's had his first kid early in the year, so
Oh,
James,
congrats.
he's a bit of terrain for the table.
Yeah, it's your year, mate. Buy a
Make
lottery
sure the
ticket.
dogs and Rowan don't eat it, but it's gonna be mad for the table. So congratulations.
Nice, congrats, James. Yeah, all right. Ready for the next one?
Yes, the Wraith Knight.
The Wraith Knight. So this one's painted by Limford, and this is a Eldar Craft Worlds Harlequins Wraith Knight. All right, here we go. Number 84, which is Sam Rubino.
Oh, Sam
Sammy
Rubino.
Rubino has won the Wraith Knight.
Awesome.
Very
So
nice.
that'll
Very...
probably convince Sam to get off his Drakari butt
yeah.
and play something else. So
Oh, very nice, very nice. Yeah. If only there's a Drakari Wraith Knight, maybe he'd run it. I don't know.
Oh, scenes. Awesome.
Okay.
All right, let's do
Well,
the Repulsor, mate. Kindly painted
all
by
right.
Hayden Waldock, kindly donated by Brisbane Gaming Collective.
Yes. All right, here we go. Random. So just to disclose, any numbers that I generate that someone's already won, you can't win a second prize. Apologies, but trying to spread the love, you know. All right, here we go. Number is 39, which is Ben Williamson. Ben Williamson has won
Williamson. Awesome.
the Repulsor.
That's
So
exciting.
yes, thank you, Ben, for donating, for
I
participating.
believe Ben is a Brisbane player who has Khorne and Black Legion and Nid. So Ben, if this is isn't an excuse for you to start a Marine Army, I don't know what is, mate.
Oh man.
All right. And we've got the Imperial Knight, kindly painted by Nick Wright and kindly donated by yourself, Luke.
Yep. Okay, you ready? Number 90 we've got, which is... Who's 90? Lachlan Carter.
Lucky
Oh
Carter.
my god. So Lachlan Carter has won the Imperial Knight, hey?
Oh, awesome. Well, hey, I think I'm pretty sure Nick is currently painting some Grey Knights for Lachlan Carter.
Oh my god. Oh, that's insane.
Awesome. Well, we've got our 4 winners. Congratulations, guys. And look, big props for you to donate to the cause. And thank you again to everyone that helped out donating these prizes. It's been lovely. And Luke, do you have all the prizes with you at the moment?
I have 3 of them, but we will get in contact with all the winners, and we will organize delivering those prizes to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get in contact.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, on that note, I think we'll try and record an episode again before the end of the year with some of the other boys. But in case we don't, you guys have a good Christmas and New Year. Keep playing, keep play testing, make that list better. And we'll the next kind of big thing we've got is Uprising Adelaide, so we'll be commenting on that and looking at list submissions for that. But hey, take it easy, Luke. It's been a pleasure as always. Eat your vegetables, call your mum. See you next time.